Welcome to Jets Rewind. I'm Marty Schupak in Valley Cottage, New York. I'm joined by the legendary Ralph Schrager, who right now is in Belmont, Massachusetts. Ralph, how are you? Happy holiday.
Feeling good that the Pats got ripped off last night. It's about time. We got ripped off twice in games with them, so it's a
That's
little turnabout.
that's right. That's right. I didn't see it, but I understand BB was a little upset.
Yeah, I mean, it was a close call, but he probably did catch it. I don't know if they would have won the game, but nobody's ever talked about the clip and the Marcus Jones punt return.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
uh,
In the back. And by the way, just quickly, I just want to apologize, all Jets Rewind fans. We didn't do a couple of shows. I had some personal family issues, and I had to take a little hiatus. But we're back right up, and we're gonna sprinkle in a little bit of the Patriots game as we prepare for the Chicago Bears. Ralph, the New York Jets have sacked Zach Wilson.
it's not his first sack of the year, though.
And not just um, naming Mike White quarterback, but making Zach Wilson inactive. So, what's your take on this as far as the short term and long term? You're pretty good having a pulse on these things. Go ahead, Ralph.
Well, I thought they had to do it for several reasons. I mean, first, he's just been so bad and getting worse. Second, it looked like the team was breaking up. And I like the fact that Salah had the guts to do it. And the short term, well, we got to see what Mike White or Flacco can do. I think it was good to keep Wilson out completely. If it were up to me, my hunch is that Flacco has a better shot at succeeding than White, but hopefully one of them does. Long term, big question. I know that when Salah and Joe Douglas took over, they were ready to sign on to Sam Darnold for a fourth year, so they're not going to give up that quickly on Zach Wilson. Obviously, not as quickly as fans like Marty Schupak, who I think gave up on him. What was about the third game of his career? Was the Patriots game last year?
So, Ralph, this is not the right time to lobby for Michael Penix Jr. from University of Washington, right?
No, I do not want to start developing another
Okay.
quarterback, Marty.
All right.
You
What I think is interesting, Ralph, that Robert Saleh, by the way, he showed some really good leadership. But in the course of that press conference in the last couple of weeks, we saw that the motive of the New York Jets for 2022 all of a sudden changed from what we want to do this year is develop Zach Wilson as a quarterback to we're going to bench this guy. We want to win football games. Ralph, how much pressure was coming from the defense, which I think is a Super Bowl ready defense right now, getting better and better?
Well, you watch what the Patriots did to Minnesota last night. Your buddy Mac Jones almost threw for 400 yards. You realize how good the Jets defense is. 2 games they completely shut him down. But yeah, Marty, if the Jets were 2-8 or 3-7, I think they would have stuck with Wilson. But you're right. They can make the playoffs this year. They're theoretically in the playoffs right now. There's every game on their schedule is winnable and losable. There are no easy outs in this league, Marty, as you see every week. It's crazy. So they're going to have to fight and claw. What's the update on Justin Fields?
We probably won't find out. I think Friday actually is the last day, so they're
Yeah,
not going to show their hands, which is a smart move.
sure.
But sometimes, the conditions he's in, Ralph. My theory. Sometimes
Maybe it's better, right?
better off that he plays. The way he is. I mean, they're talking. The coach had said he could either start or he put him on injured reserve for the rest of the season. I mean, he left a big gap in between.
Yeah,
Ralph, I'm not a Mike White fan, to be honest.
I know.
His after the Cincinnati game, I loved him, but Buffalo game, I couldn't stand him. His delivery is so slow. And I just don't like the guy. And I even went further south on him in the preseason. Despite Zach Wilson's late failure,
Right? Yeah,
you've been the best evaluator of talent
well.
I've seen. I want to ask you, is Marty Schupak using a sample size that's too small and not fair to judge Mike White?
Well, I mean, first of all, he's been in the league 5 years. He's had way less experience playing than Zach Wilson. So he's a really inexperienced guy to start off with. I think when you look at what Wilson couldn't do, like just making simple 3, 5, 7 yard passes, first seeing the guys open, and if he happened to see them open, he couldn't even get it near them. I got to feel Mike White is capable of making those passes. I'm not expecting a lot of stuff downfield, but if he can do the simple things, he's already better than Zach Wilson at this point. Yeah, he's gonna get sacked more, but I'll tell you something. After watching Zach Wilson run around like a chicken with his head cut off every time someone gets near him, I'm not going to mind a few sacks now and then. I think it's better. And I thought he had actually White didn't he have a one moment in one game he threw a couple of touchdown passes in the preseason.
Oh, in the
In the
preseason?
preseason, yeah.
I,
I don't have high hopes for him either, but with this defense, he can game manage just as well as Zach Wilson did in some of those games. That Green Bay and Denver game, oh my God, they won those games, and he was terrible in those games.
yeah, and Ralph, is it gotten to the point as Jet fans where we're satisfied with having a quarterback who just manages a game and doesn't throw any interceptions or have any turnovers? Is this the type of quarterback that you, me, and Ray want on our team?
Obviously not, but everything's relative, you know.
Right.
And to manage a game and hit like little screen passes and little stuff over the middle is a step up at this point. And it might be enough with their defense. Although Chicago, if Justin Fields is healthy, they're going to score some points. They might not win games, but they score a lot of points.
They do.
So, yeah,
you're right. What do you think was more bothersome to Robert Saleh and Woody Johnson and Joe Douglas and even his teammates? Was it the way he played or not owning up to it after the game, Ralph?
I think it's the way he played. I think he was driving the receivers crazy. You could see it on the field. I think the other stuff was sort of just the icing on the cake. And I feel like if Wilson is going to ever come back, I mean, I don't think if people think he's going to flip a switch in 5 games from now, he's going to be really sharp. I don't see it happening. You know, as far as Wilson's future goes, I think one day he might be a good quarterback. The odds are when this stuff happens, it's usually not with the team that originally drafted you. Usually you make a few stops and then you grow. I know it's hard for Jet fans to say that might have to go through this again, but we can talk later about what their options are at the end of this year if Wilson is still terrible by the end of this year.
Ralph, I thought it was funny that with that big snowstorm in Buffalo, that a lot of the Buffalo Bill fans were helping Josh Allen dig out of his house and some other Buffalo Bills. I thought it would have been funny if the Jet fans were shoveling the snow in front of Zach Wilson's door and driveway so he can't get out. But Ralph, it's kind of ironic too. The week that Zach Wilson is benched is the same week that the guy he replaced is having his first start of the season, Sam.
I know.
Which is an irony of all ironies, which I think is incredible.
It's funny that team is out of them. Every week it's a different quarterback with them. Boy, we think we're in bad shape. At least we won some games this year.
What bothered you the most about Zach Wilson? I know there's a whole litany of things.
Yeah.
Give me like one or two of the biggest things that bothered you.
Well, when I look at Zach Wilson, I think it all comes down to the fact that the game is too fast for him, and because of that, everything else falls apart. He starts panicking. He starts throwing the ball too late. He's throwing what people in his face because he's not seeing things quickly enough, and that causes his footwork and all his technique. And then he starts winging these sidearm passes because he's late with the throws. Guys are all over him. So, I mean, what bothers me the most is that he doesn't process the game, because when you're scouting a quarterback, you can scout all the measurables, his arm, his athleticism, his release. The one thing you can never know for sure until they get onto that play on the next level is how quickly they process the game. Joe Montana, great Joe Montana, used to say 75% of quarterbacking is from the neck up. And we didn't know. And for people to say, Joe Douglas, he got Zach Wilson wrong, you know, like I said, you never know until you start playing on the next level if the guy can do it. If you look at like the last 25 years, quarterbacks who have been picked in the top 3, I'd say at least half of them don't make it. It's really, really tough. It's tough to evaluate them.
Right. And listen, I hope, I've heard some Jet fans call for the end of Joe Douglas, which I think is a huge mistake.
It's ridiculous.
He's building a great foundation for this organization. Just look at the depth of the defensive line. If you look at anything, it's just unbelievable right now. But I want to ask you, Ralph, can you think of in the past of any quarterbacks that were in the same position as Zach Wilson? And let's not talk about Geno Smith. It was an 11-year gap where he just didn't get it coming out, and then all of a sudden it clicks somewhere down the line. Is there any quarterback you could think of?
Well, I don't think it clicks all of a sudden. I think it takes some years sitting on the bench, holding a clipboard and you know, playing.
We got Ray Clifford's here.
Ray the Blur. There he is.
Hey, there you go. You made it. So, but go ahead.
But guys like Alex Smith, it took him a couple of stops too. And who knows, Sam Darnold might end up being good, or Trubisky in a couple of years and a couple more stops. Ryan Fitzpatrick, Vinny's Testaverde. There's a guy who was horrible with Tampa Bay. He got a little better with Cleveland, and we actually were the recipient of probably his greatest season. But he had already been playing for about 12 years. So, quarterbacks they come around at different speeds, and they're not all the same. And unfortunately, like I said before, Ray, most of the time when these guys struggle at first, if they're going to make it, it's not with the team that drafted them.
Yeah, Ray, you're a pretty good Jets historian. And I've heard during the week how, and I did remember the year when Parcells was there, the Jets were 6-3 with Neil O'Donnell, and he replaced him with Glenn Foley. As it turned out, it was only for like a half a game or a game because Foley got hurt. But that was kind of a gutsy move because if I remember right, they were in first place. Do you remember that, Ray?
I remember, that I never felt like Parcells was big on O'Donnell. So he just
was.
Yeah. Well, he actually went down to Tennessee and had a decent, rest of his career. And when the funny thing you mentioned Testaverde, Tampa was just a mess pretty much for everybody. And
right. Yeah.
Steve Young ended up in the Hall of Fame because he got out of there and got to San Fran. So
that's right.
But yeah, I just remember that Parcells just didn't like. He wanted his big, he called him weatherproof quarterback, and Foley. Then was it the next year that Foley was starting until he injured his ribs, and then Vinny stepped in, and that
they had a bad start anyway. He probably would have benched him.
Yeah,
Foley was pretty limited.
Yeah, and the other thing is, and I don't, Ralph, you probably remember this. Who was the quarterback for Boston College? What's his name? The shorter guy,
Flutie.
Flutie. Yeah, apparently he was the quarterback at Buffalo, made the playoffs, and then he got benched.
Rob Johnson,
Johnson.
Yeah, right. The owner just had a thing for Rob Johnson because he was your classic 6'3" guy with a big arm. All Flutie did was win games. I think in this day and age, Flutie would have a better shot because there's a lot of smaller quarterbacks playing today.
Yeah, Ray, Robert Saleh said that everything is trending to Corey Davis to be active, which I think is good. But he also said that even if he's active, that Denzel Mims will be active. I don't know how that's going to work. And if he deactivates Elijah Moore at this game, I'm going to be really upset. What's your feeling about that?
There are other guys you could deactivate. Hopefully, like
We-
Ralph's favorite.
Yeah.
Hopefully, would be come before more. I think they would keep more in because they want to see him. You know, that could jumpstart things for him a little bit. I can't imagine, you know, somebody he actually did pretty well with getting, you know, all of a sudden getting no playing time.
Your volume is pretty high, Ray. Just if you turn it down just a little. Yeah.
That could be hard at this point. We'll
Okay,
see.
that's right. Go ahead.
But I think that I think that Mims has been doing too well as far as blocking and stuff. And I think if Mike White can just jumpstart our pass game a little bit, Mims might be a difference maker.
Well, it'd be nice to see Mims get a pass where that he isn't overthrown on by 12 feet. You know, it's amazing how Wilson could keep overthrowing Mims. It's mind-boggling.
Ray, right before you came on, I had asked Ralph, and I want to chime in on it. I said, what was the one or two things that bothered you most about the Zach Wilson? With me, it was these freaking two things, these short passes, either throwing them into the ground or throwing it over the heads of these guys like he did to Barrios last week, which was driving me crazy. The only other thing I think that bothered me sometimes is when receivers are open and he hits them, he doesn't lead them most of the time. I don't understand it. If you remember the first Patriots game, one of the best passes he's thrown was to Tyler Conklin. It was gorgeous, but other times he's just not leading the receivers, and it drives me crazy. And thank God that a guy like Garrett Wilson has that tremendous torque in his body where he could react to these bad throws. So I'm asking you, Ray, what are one or two things that bothered you most about Zach Wilson?
In this,
and don't say Mike LaFleur.
He bothers me with any quarterback.
I know, but go ahead.
But well, we'll see what he does too. He seemed to do well with White the last time, but I think the thing that in this latest game that bothered me most about Zach was he's fallen in love with that sidearm throw. And, you know, that's fine if you're going around a guy so he doesn't knock you down. But when he threw that wide receiver screen to Mims and overthrew him because he chucked it sidearm over his head, then I was like, what are you doing? You know, that's just something we don't need. I want to see him. I think what bothers me the most about Zach is he just doesn't do the fundamental stuff. Just get it done. Just throw the ball to the wide open guy, make the smart pass, get yourself set, throw the ball. And if he took care of fundamentals, I think some of his problems would go away.
Right. And Ray, do you think, and I had asked Ralph, do you think that the Jets do have like a Super Bowl ready defense at this point?
Well, they're playing like that right now, but you know, one thing I think people ought to keep in mind is we've got so many rookies in key spots, and they're going to hit a wall here at some point for a game or two or so. And that rookie wall is a real thing. These guys aren't used to playing 18 weeks and then possibly beyond if you make the playoffs. They're used to 12 or 13 games, and you know, even their bowl game, which adds a game, is usually a month after that or a couple weeks at least after that. So these guys are gonna, you know, it's gonna be interesting to see if there's a drop off in any of the young guys' talent for a bit. So
yeah, not to look ahead. It's funny you mentioned that because I'm kind of looking forward to the Sauce Gardner Justin Jefferson matchup in a couple of weeks.
Yeah,
which to me, Ralph, is fascinating, especially the way Jefferson is playing right now. Right now, I think Jefferson and Diggs from Buffalo are the two best receivers in football.
Can you imagine LSU a couple of years ago with Burrow, Jamar Chase, and Jefferson, and I had a lot of other players too. They were as good a team as has ever been in college since I've been following it.
And what's funny too, I was thinking about it yesterday, and I guess that in the AFC, Patrick Mahomes is probably going to be the favorite for the MVP. I think that Stephon Diggs should be like second or third in the voting. This guy is unbelievable the way he's playing. It's just incredible. And that comes from me, Ray. If you remember, I thought it was the dumbest trade in the world.
So did I at the time.
Giving up two number one draft picks for wide receivers, and it's panning out. Ralph, at any time during the Zach Wilson, Mike White era, do you think the Jets brass were a little nervous about Mike White, if they played him, doing better than Zach Wilson?
That's no, I don't think so. But if because I don't think they're intended on playing him unless Wilson got hurt. But at this point, they'll take anything. I know that it's hard for a GM and a coach with a high drafted quarterback to do something like this. But the fact that they've done it tells you where their priorities are at now.
Ray, what's your feeling? Do you think the brass was a little nervous if they put him in, that he was going to do better than Zach Wilson?
I think they would have. I think they were wary of that a little bit, but I don't think they would have let because the uproar would have been from the fans. Obviously, the coaches are still going to go with who they think, and so I think they were a little wary because of the outcry if they replace him, and then if Zach went in, and especially if Zach went in and stumbled more. But I think we're at a point now that the fan, let's face it, the fans were cheering for White at halftime. So, they're ready. They were ready for this change. And so it made it a lot easier now than it would have been maybe last year.
Right. Ralph, Ray came on late and he didn't hear that you mentioned about the Patriots game, because Ray was very upset that the Patriots got screwed on a bad call, right, Ray?
Yeah, it's killing. I can't believe that we didn't have a meeting of the minds and overturn it. The brass from the NFL should have stepped in
And
immediately.
maybe they will in a couple of weeks. Yeah,
They'll go back. So anyway, anything else, fellas, before we begin to close this out?
Ray, you mentioned Ray's kryptonite, Mike LaFleur. And, I've not been big on him either, but, I watched the breakdown of a lot of Wilson's passes last week, and there were guys open. He was looking right at him, and he didn't even throw it sometimes because you don't know what's going on in his head. His head it's insane. I mean, he's looking, but he's not seeing anything.
Yeah.
And so, that Mims play, I mean, I every time I watch that, I just say, there's the game right there. He makes that pass, it's a touchdown, they win the game. And it's just maddening. And so I'm not going to get too down on LaFleur until let's watch him for a couple of weeks with another quarterback and see if they can pick out an open receiver.
Well, originally I was always jumping on LaFleur last year and some this year, but it's more the play call than the who's in there that it baffles me once in a while. But I will say when Mike White went in, and last year even when Flacco went in, things seemed to go better. So at some point I'm like, well, it can't be all LaFleur then. It's got to be, on Zach quite a bit. He's not doing something within the system. So
well, yeah. Marty, here's a question for you guys. I mean, what is it do you think flipped the switch for Salah on dropping it? Was it because of his play, or was it because of the players seeming like they might revolt? Or I think when they finally sat down and watched the film, you think they looked at it and said, oh my God, this is just awful.
You know what? I'm actually going to give Ray a little credit. I'll tell you why. Ray said with me off the air that he thinks one of the biggest turning points of the seasons was when Quinnen Williams opened his mouth about forget the goddamn blitzing and let us rush the passer. Mm-hmm. And that showed me that Salah and the staff actually listens to the players, which I got to give him credit. And I really believe the defense probably was opening their mouth. I mean, you saw some of these guys tweeted and they deleted the tweets, which I told Ray, that's a great technique.
Yeah.
And you want to get a point across. Put something out there, and then an hour later, ahead of time you're going to delete it. So I think it was the players, and I think it was mostly on defense. And forget what these guys are telling the press or being told to say to the press. I think that they're besides themselves. If you think about it, in 2 games against the Patriots, the defense gave up 1 touchdown and lost them both games. That's outrageous to me. And,
It is.
and as far as and by the way, I want to give credit to some Justin Hardy, which I'll get to in a second. But it was just unbelievable. I can't remember a Jets defense playing as well as they did last game. And if you look at the game, especially on 3rd down plays, pushing the Patriots back out of field goal range
every time. Yeah, it's part of that was on Mac Jones. He reminds me of a little Ken O'Brien. You know, he throws nice pass, but he does hold the ball too long. He played great last night.
I'm the only one that likes Mac Jones here.
You know, I'll tell you, after last night, people up here in Boston, they're not into him at all. But last night he played a good game, and you got to give him credit.
He did play well.
Yeah. But yeah, their defense is ridiculous, and it was just painful. The amazing thing is they had a short field every time they got the ball in Patriots, and they still couldn't even get a field goal out of it. It was really remarkable.
I just want to mention that as unaccountable that Zach Wilson was, Justin Hardy was a class guy at the end of the game, blaming that return punt on himself. And he said he took 100% of the blame. And it really wasn't his fault. I mean, he was like double or triple team on that play, but he took a lot of pride and he opened his mouth. Ray, I want to ask you the same question Ralph asked me. What made Salah come to this decision? Was it looking at the film, or was it the players, in particular the defense, that gave him feedback?
I think it was probably a little bit of both. I'm sure they didn't like. I mean, you didn't need to look at the film to not like what went on that.
Yeah, but it got worse when you look at the film.
Looking at the film, and it gets worse. But he's a player's coach, and I can't help but believe that when they started going on both sides of the ball, I mean, I think Garrett Wilson had a lot to do with it too. What he was saying,
Garrett Wilson, for a rookie, that guy, boy, he does not hold back.
He's great, and if you watch him on the field. I'm
sorry. I was just saying, it's not like it's unwarranted. He's not just ripping things or guys for no reason or just sound off about himself.
Right.
He's making valid points.
Was he that fiery at Ohio State, or did you realize that he was like that?
Much.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a combination. This is what I love about being fiery and his enthusiasm to win. If you look in that Cleveland game on that onside kick, when they recovered, you would have thought he won the $1 billion lotto. He was going nuts. He was jumping up. He was jumping 6 feet off the ground. And that's why I kind of love the guy. I just want to close this out. I just want to tell you guys, this is what I'm hoping. And you're going to shake your heads, especially my friend Ray, but I want the Jets to make the playoffs. I want the Patriots to make the playoffs. I want to meet them for a 3rd time up in Foxborough. That's what I want. I don't want to play in MetLife. I want to do it up in Foxborough.
Okay, but now here's what that will mean.
Who's the quarterback, though, Marty?
Well, that means we both have to win probably more than one playoff game for that to happen, because they're both going to be if they
low seeds.
make it, we'd both be wild cards.
I never said it was realistic.
Good luck on that.
I'm telling you what I want.
I know. Well, I know what you want.
I want that, and I want to. Ralph, I don't know if you heard it Tuesday remember 2 days after they beat the Jets at Bill Belichick's press conference, they asked him, "What did you do on your bye week?" And he said, "I prepared for the Minnesota Vikings." Didn't even mention the Jets. I mean, he goes so far out of his way just to pour that salt. It's just unbelievable.
Hey, Ray, let me ask you something. I don't know if you guys remember when the Patriots made the Super Bowl in 1985 with Tony Eason. They got killed by the Bears. So They beat the Jets in the first round. Do I remember correctly that the Jets beat them both games in the regular season? I have to look that up, but that's my recollection on that.
I don't remember. I know they won one of them, but I'm not positive they won. But
All right, we'll look that
they
one
were
up.
they got on a roll towards
Yeah.
the end of the year, so we easily could have if we played them earlier.
Yeah,
Ralph's the one, I believe, and Ralph, you could confirm. Well, you told me the year, they won with the David Harris interception. You
yeah.
even said to me, I think they lost 2 times to the Patriots that year. You said they're not going to beat them a third time. It's so hard to win a third time in the NFL. Do you remember that?
I don't think it was that year. I think the Jets got him in the beginning of the year.
Oh,
Then
did they?
Then they played a Monday night game where they were both
Monday
like
night game.
9-1, and the Patriots beat them by 45-3.
Yeah.
I remember at the beginning of the game, it was really cold, and Sanchez just huddled on the sideline before the game. And I'm saying that guy is not ready to play football, and the whole team wasn't. But
I remember
I
that.
agree, Marty. It's tough to beat a team 3 times, especially the way the Patriots have beaten the Jets. They shouldn't have won either of those games.
No. I remember that game though, the Monday night game, and I remember when it hit like 30-3, and I said, and Belichick was moving them down the field, and I don't remember who I was talking to. I just said, let them keep scoring, just let them just completely drill us.
You told me that,
And
right.
it was you, and well, and I just said, let Rex should just show him this tape over and over going into that playoff game, because that's the best thing they could have done was drill us by 42 points. And embarrass the hell out of them. So.
And I know that this podcast is going to get back to Zach Wilson, and I just want to mention to Zach, one of the reasons that a quarterback is the highest paid player on a roster is because he takes responsibility when things go bad, even if it's not his fault. And I'll be honest with you, except for one press conference when I think Mark Sanchez read from a little piece of paper, he was very good, like taking the blame for things that weren't his fault. And Zach Wilson has to take a lesson like that. And that's the way it is in a quarterback-driven league. And in fact, I heard Boomer Esiason say about the same thing this week, that he would go out of his way to take the blame and it wasn't his fault. And that's what quarterbacks have to do. All right. Anything else in closing up as we
one thing. Right. And it's just a question. I don't know, because I missed the part. So I don't know if you guys talked about it, but do you think, I want to hear you guys, I know what I think, but do you guys think we are going to make a play for one of the free agent quarterbacks? I know, Marty, you had mentioned Minshew. And obviously, despite the cost, I think Garoppolo would be in play if we're looking at that, although the cost might be a factor on that one. But he fits the system so well that,
Well, it's fun. I like Minshew. I know Ralph likes him, and some of the names that have been passed around this week are Garoppolo,
Derek
Carr, and
Jacoby Brissett. I hear people.
Which I don't want Brissett. If we were sure that we were like a quarterback away, I think Garoppolo or Carr, they might be the guy to put us over the top. That's my feeling. What do you think, Ralph?
I think those two guys are probably too expensive. I think Minshew's a better fit. I think this guy has got an incredibly raw deal because of his size and his drafts, where he was drafted. And he won't be that expensive. And I think he'd be, I think if they brought him in, they'd make him, he and Wilson just go, fight for the job, or they would give it to him. I don't know. I don't know what they're going to do with Wilson, but I think Minshew's a good fit.
I think he's a good fit. I don't know if he's a better fit than Garoppolo, because it's the same system. Garoppolo has been running for how many years in San Fran, but I think he's probably every bit as good a fit, and cost wise, like you say,
he's a lot younger too, and
and
Garoppolo gets injured a lot. So I mean, if you had a choice between Garoppolo and Derek Carr, and say their money was similar, which one would you want?
I'd want Garoppolo.
That's a tough one. Yeah, I'd probably go with Garoppolo. I've seen him play more, to be honest with you, so I can't be perfectly objective. How about you, Ralph?
I think I'd take Derek Carr. I think he's just a better quarterback. And like I said, I always worried about Garoppolo being a little fragile.
Yeah, it's funny, Carr, because he had that year where
he had a couple of really good years.
They were going to win, and then he broke his leg.
Yeah.
That was unbelievable. I'll never forget that. I think the Patriots won that
Yeah,
year.
that was pretty early in his career, second or third year, you know.
Was it?
Yeah.
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 Anyway, we're going to close this out for Ray Clifford and Ralph Schrager and Marty Schupak. And I hope everyone's Thanksgiving was a great time. And just remember, there are a lot of people out there that are less fortunate than you are. Please consider that too. And we'll be on the air then probably on Sunday night. And make sure you listen to my 2-Minute Tuesday for us. Oh, by the way, go to Jets Rewind. We have a great article up on Chad Paddington for all you older Jet fans. Okay. Until next time, for Jets Rewind.